It's often said the soul of a city lies in its culture, and here in Bristol they're world famous for it, from Banksy to Massive Attack. But the City Council has cut arts funding for many from April. Among those impacted, Bristol's Old Vic Theatre. This is just one of the many youth and community projects they run. They feel they're providing a kind of cultural social services.
I've been asked before about whether you fund a hospital or whether you fund a theatre, but for me the lines are more blurry now because we are working with the NHS. We work with care homes like Brunel Care, we work with state schools, we're in every ward of the city. There are really blurry lines now as to what we deliver versus what other social services deliver, and theatre is no longer just middle-class pastime.
Can you speak to him? He's not the talking type.
Bristol Old Vic is home to Oi Polloi, one of the UK's only theatre groups for people who have experience of being homeless. For Badger, it's been a lifeline.
I had what I would call a full life enema. I lost my job, my health and my house within the space of 2 weeks. You know, I've been cast on the redundant heap for work purposes. This gives a glimmer of potential future that makes me useful.
The world of theatre can feel inaccessible. Young 66 is a group which finds talent in youth clubs and schools. It's given teenagers David and Senan a foot in the door. Tell me what it's like when you walk out on stage.
It's quite like, whoa, like, look at me. Like, it feels like, oh, look, like, I'm like 17 and I've already done this.
It's a bit magic, like, because it's such like a big theatre.
Bristol is, of course, not the only council facing a financial crisis. Some have already gone bankrupt, among them Birmingham, announcing massive cuts to culture this week. A similar story in Nottingham. Watershed Cinema in Bristol is among the cultural institutions here facing cuts.
I think there will be untold damage, not only to the culture sector across the country, but also to the reputation of places like Bristol.
Obviously, the local council would argue that they've had their funding cut by central government for years, that this is not a decision they've taken lightly.
I definitely wouldn't want to be making those choices. Those are really difficult choices. I think it's important that we think holistically across all of these services and not make those kinds of polarised choices.
As the cuts were announced, the refurbished Bristol Beacon Concert Hall reopened. The council were criticised for underestimating its cost, £132 million, triple the original budget. On the funding cuts, we asked Bristol City Council for an interview or a statement. They didn't respond to either.
As they watch on TV thinking, to hell with these fools with nothing to lose, they should have stayed in school instead of breaking the rules.
While poet Lawrence who grew up in and out of the care system, says working with Watershed Cinema helped him feel at home.
I had times where I was on the run, living off the streets and kind of getting in and out of trouble, and then kind of turning your life around, and then getting through poetry, got into the arts, and this has been a process coming back through there, really.
Lawrence leads youth projects across the city and believes cutting the arts could have devastating consequences.
There's more children in violence, more children going to prison, more children excluded from school. I think it's not just apparent, it's very obvious that if you limit people's opportunities, that is what's going to happen. And I think we've had enough time over the last few decades to see that that is exactly that course of action will lead to this. So people shouldn't be surprised about what's happening on the streets in the UK today, because the youth are they're just not being seen.
While the Local Government Association says councils are seeing greater pressure and demand on their statutory obligations to provide children's services, adult social care, and some see cutting the arts as the least worst option.